in general, the DED program and its design from its inception was to is really to create the next generation of educational leaders. And the DED program differentiates itself from other kinds of doctoral programs in that students are really here to address and solve the most critical problems of practice. So we create critical scholars and we create problem solvers. It's really set up and designed in a way that accommodates students who won't necessarily be living and working here in Eugene. We do have students who do that, but we provide a lot of opportunities for students to participate in the program from other sites. And they may do that through the use of technology. So we, for example, would bring students and frequently bring students into classes using virtual classrooms. And students would still be interacting with each other and they'd be interacting with faculty, but that might be done through video conferencing or might be done through an external video server. And so students have an opportunity to interact with each other and also directly with the faculty. What we won't compromise is how important it is to in the field to address problems of practice through problem solving with others. So we have a program that is accessible in terms of the use of technology, but not designed to be, independently done. It's not a narrow online program where you're expected to sort of work quietly in a dark room and access the program materials online, and that's your experience. It's very interactive, and our students have direct access and frequent access to our faculty and our advisors and support systems. What we are just in the process now of launching within the DED program is a new approach that frames the problems of practice that our students address into concentration areas. And we really are offering right now 3 concentrations. The first one is in literacy leadership. The second one is in equity leadership. And then the third one is really part of what has already been our core program in policy leadership. And so those are the 3 main components of the concentrations. The idea here is that the work of effective leadership within schools, within the broader context, is not a general approach. We don't take a general approach. The problems we address as leaders in the field are highly content specific, and they require a very specific set of skills to address. And so these new concentration areas are really designed to be right out there at the forefront of where the field is going and what the next wave of professionals need in terms of their background.
In this emphasis, we again have 4 courses or 16 credits where students will develop a deeper understanding of reading and writing acquisition and development and disabilities and struggles that students face when they're learning to read and write. And so our students who participate in this emphasis will become much more expert and adept at understanding data about literacy, as well as coming up with systemic solutions that address needs of individuals and systems. As we've been talking to individuals around the state, what we've been hearing is that there's a great deal of interest in these courses that we've created, whereas not so much in the credential. They just want to take the courses. They don't need the credential for where they want to go in their careers. And we've actually had people just ask, can't I take some of these courses that you've developed for the endorsement program as part of my DED? And to be honest, conversations like that are some of the things that really did start us thinking about maybe we should be offering more choices and opportunities for our DED students to take a deeper dive into a particular area that is of intrinsic and deep interest to them.
One of the things that has, for me personally, that has given rise to this emphasis in my own career around equity and access has to do with what appears to be impenetrable disparities in terms of outcomes for students that have been underserved by the education system for generation upon generations. And there's a long line of research and scholarship trying to describe things like the achievement gap, the fact that students who are underrepresented, particularly African American students, Latino students, Native American students, students who come from poverty, students who speak languages other than English, students who might have need for special education. The disparities in outcomes for many students who are underrepresented have been documented through research and scholarship one generation after another. And for me, that research has been very important. And in my own research life, we study the kinds of variables that that predict those disparities. So we're really interested in trying to understand how those disparities emerge. But more importantly than that is really what do we do about it? And we now have a field that has done a great job of documenting disparities, but we don't yet have a strong evidence base for the kinds of practices that can disrupt those educational disparities in the achievement gap. That's a major driver for me personally about the need for this kind of concentration. This problem that we've documented disparities for a long time, but we've not yet developed the tools within the system to disrupt them. And even in places where we've seen relative improvements in student outcomes, lower dropout rates, the achievement gap, particularly for students of color and students who are poor, continues to be very entrenched in the system. Addressing those problems is really, in many ways, what this concentration is about. Understanding what causes it, but being more focused on the kinds of variables that really can make an impact on outcomes. So that concentration is designed in many ways to help students identify the malleable, changeable factors that really can make a difference in terms of closing the achievement gap. They're also designed to build within their leadership styles an approach and a lens to equity that is necessary for students to feel welcomed and included in the school, and that sees the schools as positioned within a broader, very diverse community. And that's the really other critical skill set that's being developed in this concentration, that we have educational leaders who position equity at the forefront of what they do. That inclusion, that having students, staff, and families within the community feel welcomed in a school is a fundamental job of all effective leaders, and that's a critical part of the concentration.
Technically, all the work we do has policy implications. But if you read a textbook description of policy, which I think most people adhere to, and it makes sense to me, policy analysis looks at the practice of education, the laws, the procedures, the structures that have been set up around education, and tries to identify how those laws, policies, procedures affect education generally. Not just for the masses, but for how what we do negatively affects certain groups. As a result, policy analysis or policy research or policy evaluation is focused on what the structures are, trying to define the problem. I'm of the opinion that 9 times out of 10, we know there's a problem, but we don't understand the nuances of the problem. We try to get data then from multiple sources. Policy analysis, policy research, policy evaluation can include quantitative analysis, certainly, can include analysis of secondary databases, but also can include focus groups, group input, surveys, that we conduct relative to particular questions, and qualitative work, case studies of individuals and units, school districts, states, to see how in fact these usually well-intended policies can have unintended negative consequences. The issue then is how those results are fed back and make a difference in how then the problem is changed. And it's a very dynamic process, and it's a very important process that I think we do a very good job of addressing in our college. The reality for us is that the college is a force of nature. We have 5% of the faculty on campus, and we account for 35% of the external funding on campus. We have yearly around 130 to 140 different externally funded research projects. So our faculty are uniquely situated to provide opportunities to students to have experiences that they would not have at other universities.